Hey everybody, I wanted to share this video with you so that you would be able to have it as reference while you are working on your proposal papers. What I'm going to go through in this lecture basically is what the proposal is, what goes where in the proposal, and the basic outline for it so that you can start working on this soon. The proposal paper is intended to tell the audience exactly what experiment you are doing, why you are doing it, and how you are going to go about doing the actual experiment. The proposal paper starts off like any other APA paper in that you have a title page. The titles should reflect the example that you see here on the screen, the effect of blank on blank, colon, a proposal. So if you are going to be measuring the effect of calcium chloride on surface temperature, what this would say would be the effect of calcium chloride on surface temperature, a proposal. So whatever your experimental design title said, that is going to become the actual title of your proposal paper. Okay. Now for the body of the paper, you begin with an introductory paragraph. You are going to include the purpose of the experiment and the hypothesis. You want the introductory paragraph to be brief. You do not want to include procedure here or how you are going to measure your results. Next, you're going to have your literature review. This is also referred to as the background section. They are the same. I like it better when it's titled literature review, but you could title that section background if you wanted to. And this is literally where you are going to insert your revised literature review. You no longer need the introduction or concluding paragraphs that you had in your original lit review because now it's no longer a standalone paper. Now the literature review is part of a bigger paper, the proposal. After this, you're going to include your methodology. Methodology includes your materials list, and you will list this out in a bulleted format. Here, you need to include all the materials that you think you're going to use in your experiment. If you know specific amounts or measurements, please include those, and if brand names are important, please include those as well. Don't forget to include a LabQuest unit and the different probes that come with it if you're planning to use any of those. Methodology then moves into procedure. So you're actually going to write this out in paragraph form. On the experimental design diagram, if you jotted out your procedure in quick bulleted points, or if you numbered the steps, 1 through 5 or however many you had, you're actually now going to take those bulleted points and flesh them out more fully into paragraph form. Because you have not done the experiment and it's one that's in the future, then you need to use we will. Okay, so use the future tense. And in methodology, you also include safety procedures. Next, you're going to have a section called anticipated results. This is what you think you might find, and you don't necessarily need a statement here. This is where you would actually put a sample data table that you could use to gather data and record it during your experiment. And this is where you would put a sample graph that you would use. You won't have anything there, so don't make up any data, don't make up any numbers, just for argument's sake. You leave them blank. If you're going to have qualitative and quantitative data, then include an example data table for both of those areas and a sample graph for both of those areas. After your anticipated results, you're going to have a conclusion paragraph where you wrap up your proposal. Here you're going to restate your purpose, why you are doing the experiment, why it is important, and then you're going to restate your hypothesis. And you restate the hypothesis identically to what you have said in the introductory paragraph. Following the concluding paragraph, you're now going to have your reference pages. These are the same ones that you used in your literature review. Just be sure all the corrections have been made. So here are the major headings that you're going to need for the paper. You bold all your headings and you bold all your subheadings. The introductory paragraph should be headed with the full title of your paper, centered and in bold. Okay? So that would read the effect of blank on blank colon a proposal. Again, in the introductory paragraph, you include the topic of your experiment. You want to include the purpose of your experiment. Here you want to include why it matters. What real-world impact and purpose does your experiment have? And you want to include your hypothesis in the proper if, then, because format. Following this as a major heading, you have your background or your literature review. And you may have to adjust some of the headings and subheadings within that. You should know how to do that. Some of those major headings may now become subheadings depending. So just look over those. If you have questions about this, then see me. You should pretty much just be copying and pasting the literature review, the body of it, into the proposal paper. After this, centered and in bold, you're going to have the term methodology. Underneath methodology, left justified as a subheading in bold, you're going to have your materials list. Again, the materials should be bulleted. Include amounts if you know your amounts, and include brand names if they are relevant. Underneath that, left justified in bold, you should have your procedure. Your procedure should be written out in paragraph form. And within that procedure, you should include your safety precautions. If you don't have safety precautions because the nature of your lab simply doesn't call for it, you still must acknowledge safety procedure exists, and you can make a statement like this. Due to the nature of our experiment, no safety precautions are necessary. Following this as a centered major heading in bold would be your anticipated results. This is where you put a sample data table and a sample graph. Again, you don't need any actual numbers here. They're just blank templates of what you think you could use. You do want to label and title the table and the graph. Especially think about the X and the Y axis when you are putting your graph in there. Next, as a centered major heading in bold, you'll have conclusion. And this is where, again, you restate the purpose of what you are doing, why it's relevant, why it's important, what the real world impact could be, and you include your hypothesis. Again, the hypothesis in the conclusion should match the hypothesis that's in the introductory paragraph. So, for Symposium, you are going to also create a PowerPoint or a Google slide to show the audience. And you basically are going to use your proposal paper to outline the different slides that you need in the PowerPoint. You want to make sure that your theme, the font style, the background, pictures, and colors fit with your topic. Here are the slides that you need. The very first one, of course, you need a title slide, the effect of blank on blank. Underneath that, you need to put your group member names alphabetized by last name. You want the title slide to really pop and catch the audience's attention. So be careful here, or be certain to include an image, a graphic of some kind that relates to your topic, that's aesthetic, which means that it looks pretty, it looks good, so your audience takes immediate notice and that they're drawn into your presentation. After your title slide, you're going to have a purpose slide, and your purpose can be written out in one sentence. Remember, PowerPoints aren't for lots of words. They are for your audience as a guide to follow and for you as a point of reference as you're presenting. On the purpose slide, you're going to write one sentence that reflects the main reason for why you are conducting the experiment that you are conducting. Again, here, consider your impact on the world, consider the relevance and importance of your research. Following, you are going to have background slides. This is where you pull the major points from your literature review and you list those out in bulleted points. Don't use complete sentences here, okay? Use basic ideas in bullet format that you can then verbally go in depth about. You'll probably have a couple of slides for this. Afterward, you have a research question and hypothesis slide. Your research question should be a full statement. What is the effect of blank on blank? And underneath that, you should have your full hypothesis in the proper if, then, because format. I like to see the research question and hypothesis on one slide together. However, if your hypothesis is very wordy and you're afraid to take away from it, you could put the research question on one slide and then the hypothesis on the next, and that would be okay as well. Following this, you're going to have methodology slides. You're going to have a materials slide. If it's a long list of materials, I encourage you to use columns. You also don't have to include in the PowerPoint every material you plan to use. This is where you are going to focus on the major materials that you need. And then verbally, again, you could say we will also be using basic materials such as pen, paper, etc. After this, you'll have your procedure slides. You'll probably have several procedure slides. These should be very simple bulleted statements because, of course, you can elaborate more on them orally as you go over the slides. Next, for your anticipated results, you're going to show your audience the sample data table you could use for your experiment and the sample graph that could reflect your data. I would use a slide for each one because if not, the lines in the data table may be hard to see, and the way that you want to measure your graph could also be difficult to see. Be sure that you give your data table a name or title and your graph as well, and be sure that you are labeling your X and your Y axis if you have them. After this, you're going to have a conclusion slide where, again, you could restate your purpose and why what you're doing has relevance. After this, you're going to have reference slides. More than likely, you'll have more than one. You might have 2 or 3 of these. Please follow APA format. It's essentially copying and pasting the references page from your proposal paper into the slide. So you want hanging indent, you want everything to be alphabetically used, italicized if it should be, and so forth. Some helpful hints for you while you are working on your PowerPoints. You want to make sure your backgrounds and color themes are easily discernible for the audience. When the audience is looking up at the screen over in the gym, they need to be able to see all of the lines, all of the bullet points, and so forth. So you want your backgrounds and color schemes to contrast. So if you're using a dark background color, then you might want to use for your text color a much lighter shade. So use contrasting colors for backgrounds and fonts. Again, use an appropriate theme for slides. If you're doing a presentation, involving bees, for example, then you want your theme to reflect that. You might find a honeycomb theme that would accompany it well. You can include pictures. I encourage you to include pictures for your slides. You don't want slides that are just plain. Be sure that you reference every picture, though. And if you look at APA 7 on Purdue OWL, it will show you how to format or how to make a reference entry for a picture. Avoid busy transitions or effects. This is not a time to include a lot of movement in the presentation. You want it to be professional. Make sure that your words are easy to read on the screen. Make the text as large as you can without it being overwhelming. Remember, there will be people on back rows over in the gym who need to be able to read what your screen says. And you want to be sure that you follow the 6x6 rule. That means that you have no more than 6 bullets on a screen, no more than 6 words per line. You see I violated my own rule here. There are 7 bullets, but that's because I didn't want to go to another slide. So 6 words per line, no more than 6 bullets per slide. If you have more than that, then create another slide for the topic. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If you have any questions, then please be sure to let me know.